Right, good evening everyone. We seem to be missing our chair, so could we have election of chair for this meeting only, please? You can. You happy for that, Chair? Are you happy for that?
Okay. I did tell him that I'm not ready to start chairing a meeting this week.
Yeah, no problem, I can do that. And of course, we've got to read a script, haven't we? Right, are you ready for this? The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. Recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Attendees are required to wear face masks on entry to the building and to the meeting room. They may be removed when seated. Would everyone in the hall please ensure you have scanned the QR NHS COVID app poster with your mobile phone located at the entrance to the chamber. Members and officers, please remember to switch, this is the bit that everybody gets wrong. It really ought to be better worded than this. Members and officers, please remember to switch their microphones on when speaking and speak directly into the microphone, and switch microphones off when finished. Reporting officers joining the meeting using Teams, I don't think there are any this evening, are there, Matt? So we don't need to go through that bit. Switch off your mobile phones or place on silent mode, please. Agenda. This is going to be a lot of fun, turning backwards and forwards. Apologies for absence, Matt.
None, Chair.
Minutes of the meeting of the 16th of August. Everybody happy with those? Yes. Thank you. I'll sign them later, Matt. Disclosures of interest. You know the rules as well as I do. Has anybody got an interest they wish to declare at this stage? If something becomes obvious to you as we go through, please declare as at the first opportunity. Section 106, no.
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Urgent business, none, I guess.
Chair.
No references, no chair's announcements because the chair's not here. Finance updates. Dev.
Thank you, Chair. So what you have in front of you is the first quarter. So although it's the first quarter, the report will look at the forecast. So we are forecasting what the position will be by end of this year based on the best information available. So I have to say it's quite volatile. The situation is fluid. At one point we are coming out of the lockdown and then suddenly we've got the Delta variant. So it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. Absolutely difficult. And especially when we're talking about costs, how much we'll get refund from central government, when we're talking about sales fees and charges, how parking income will recover. So we are working some high-level scenario. And what we're trying to do here as well, you will see this is the June figures, but it went to executive on 16th of August. So June, just within 6 weeks, we managed to produce a very detailed report because we want to get the information out. If we have to take any action, we take action ASAP. Because by the time we fit 2-3 months, practically the year is gone. So thanks to the finance team and throughout the council to working with us, and right now we are working on Q2. So that's as well we're trying to get it ASAP. So timely information, but sometimes you produce information a bit, we have to make some estimates. But we like to. And last time I did brief FRG, even before it went to executive, I did brief FRG before that, so that at least you are aware in terms of the scrutiny. So on this report, I will just start to point out further recommendations. So when I take you through the report, it's a very important report because this and the Q2, we have to use it in order for 22-23 budget preparation. So it's absolutely important that we get these figures as close as possible, given the budget are very volatile. So the first recommendation I'll take you through is what is the current net overspend, but I will take you through the detail because some of them we are using contingency, we are using one-off, so it's was pointing out those pressures before use of contingency and pressures after use of contingency. Then we'll take you through the savings delivery program. And that savings delivery program, we have to put it a bit context, because when we set the emergency budget, it was a 2-year savings delivery program, but then we'll put 2021 and before 1920, because there's some of the savings of 1920. One of the reasons is because we went in the pandemic, some of them there has been a delay. So we have to look at 3 years, how much has been delivered. So we'll look at those as well. And then we'll look at the risk in terms of coronavirus. And we look at the forecast in terms of HRA, public and schools budget as well. So we touch on those, the capital program, and there's additional recommendation to approve what was an increased take-up in green waste collection. So because the green waste was quite successful, so there was an additional take-up, so there's an additional cost which we had to put back into the services in order to deliver the green waste collection service, which is required by the resident. So first, you will see the background. The paragraph 2 talk about the general fund position continues to be extremely challenging. And that's not only because of local government. We are already working in an environment since 2010 of reduced government funding. And at the same time, there's increase in demand. And at the same time, now we were hit by coronavirus. And on top of that, the airport has been badly hit. So those are the things which you have taken into account. And Luton is an area which has been badly affected when you see the number of staff have been furloughed, because the private sector, we are heavily dependent on the airport, on some of the sort of car industry, and there's quite a heavy dependence on retail and hospitality as well. So if you look at currently when we're talking about what the recovery looks like, so everybody is talking about, previously we hear about U-shape, so you go down and you recover quickly, V-shape is very sharp, U is very flat, now they're talking about K-shape recovery. That's not known. And the K-shape means, yeah, we were here, we went down, so that's the first side of the K, and some will recover fast, the Amazon, the IT, because that's a great demand, and then some won't recover. So some will still going down. So here we're talking about impact of high street, impact of hospitality, impact on the fees and charges that we just parking. So not every coming back working from home, the parking. So we're talking about K type of recovery. Some will recover quick, will do well. Amazon will do well. Amazon is already doing well. Some will recover and will take a little bit further to recover. And that's a challenge for everybody. It's not just for Luton, but in our case, because our reliance on the airport, which is quite an economic power in generating jobs, we have to very much hope, and which is government has released some of the restrictions, so hope the airport will start to pick up quickly. And that will be the engine towards recovery, not just for Luton, but it's regarded as a national infrastructure. So the airport is very important in recovery of the national plus a regional, because it's not only Luton, there's a lot of region rely on that airport. So that is worth noting, is the K type of recovery is we have to make sure. So here, the other thing which I will point out, that in 21-22, so we received quite significant amount of funding from central government. That was good. MHCLG really explained central government, the pressure on local government. So there was 19 million directly for coronavirus, plus there were other parts, business rates and company and everything. But in 21-22, 6.7 million directly linked with coronavirus pressures. So those have been practically allocated, i.e. the cost pressure which we're expecting. But I will have to mention to members is this is just for the first quarter. We don't expect any further funding from central government for quarter 2, 3, and 4. But we know the pressure is the pandemic and the recovery will be slower. So the way the economy will recover and income will generate from parking and other trading activities will be slower. So that's what we are trying to keep this 6.7, and right now the forecast is potentially will have a shortfall of sales fees and charges in the region of 3 million this year. So you will see an allocation, but that figure it keeps on changing because, as I said, it's very fluid. So it was pointing out, and you will see how that 6.7 is allocated. So the bit which is very important for members to look at is that paragraph 4. And that paragraph 4, we try to split between what is core services and what is coronavirus. Because the coronavirus, we expect this when we start to come out and the economy start to recover and the economy start to come back to the norm, then the coronavirus funding we don't expect. However, there might be still pressure which we'll have to assess as part of Q2 and reflect that in our 22-23 budget, because there are certain things we know that sales fees and charges won't recover fully this year or even next year. But we'll have to keep an eye and make those assessments. So if you look at the service pressure before contingency is 13.3 million, and then after contingency. So what we do here, and that's when we look at the table below, how we are utilizing our savings over 3 years. So we'll always set aside the level of contingency to help us during that transition. So that's why we're using in 21-22 first quarter, savings contingency of 3.4 and savings delivery contingency of 3.5 million. And after the contingency use is 4.3, and then you will see on the right hand side the pressures at that point for coronavirus pressure was 5.4. We are using 4.9 million plus $500,000 in order to fund the coronavirus impact, which is a right hand column. So that money is completely utilized. And part of this which is not utilized has been utilized, which is you will see on fifth line 1.7. And why using 1.7 here? Because some of the savings, there has been a delay in delivering those savings, because especially like temporary accommodation and everything, we have to wait for when we can start to apply those measures in order to reduce the number of homelessness. So there's an element of that is going towards meeting our savings not delivered yet. So we're in progress of delivering those services. So after all those one-off, you will see employee pay award, 1.2 million. This is more likely that we are looking at will be in the region of 1.4 million. So that will slightly go up. And then we had one-off reduction in borrowing costs because we took advantage of short-term borrowing. But now this year we've started locking on long-term borrowing because we can see that the rate might start to increase gradually. So as part of the treasury management, we can see that trend. So it start to lock long-term now. So we are borrowing from PWLB. So we will try to wind down those short-term. I think by end of this month, we will wind down most of our short-term borrowing. So there won't be any short-term borrowing left. So we're converting into long-term borrowing. And that's the risk which we have to manage as part of treasury. So that treasury management strategy has helped us to deliver a 2 billion savings in terms of borrowing costs. But that is one-off because now we are locking into borrowing and the rates are good. So we're trying to lock those ASAP. So you will see the bottom line figure was 1.8, but we've got always a general contingency in the region of 2.2 million. So at this stage, we are not allocating the general contingency because this is something down the line. It's at the it's a responsibility for the chief exec and the leader to agree in conjunction with I will be advising how we are going to allocate those general contingency. So at that point for the quarter one, which was as an early stage, we tried to get the figures within 6 weeks. It's showing that, yeah, based on those assumptions, we have a balanced budget position. But bearing in mind that some of the areas we have to keep close. And that's what we're doing in Q2. And we can see pressures when we are opening the economy and then children are going back to school and we are starting to get back to the norm. There are pressures building up in adult social care and children's services. So we have to just keep an eye how to manage those pressures. So the largest elements of the 13.4, it's described in paragraph 6. So you will see current savings shortfall 8.4. So I will explain you that 8.4 is over 3 years. So we'll look at the 3 year savings we are going to deliver. There's a table I will take you through. Then there's pressures on temporary accommodation, children care placement, waste disposal. Waste disposal is interesting. Why this is interesting is more people working from home means creating more waste. So that more waste has been created and has to be disposed. So if they're going to work, that waste is not in the area. So that is putting a pressure on the waste disposal, but what would hope that is one-off. So some of them is directly linked with coronavirus. So recovery, revenue, recovery fees, this is like summons, enforcement, all these things. So that as well, because the court were not open, so we couldn't issue summons. So these are around 800. So you will see the impact of coronavirus still with us. Now the court is starting to take cases and then those are the figures which hopefully will start to recover. There is a 1.1 million for Preservation House, which was for Central Park Access Road, and that we are exploring options how we can mitigate that loss as well. Then I will try to take you on paragraph 11, 12. Those give you a much more detailed information in each department, give a further breakdown. So if there's any specific areas you would like me to go through, I'm quite happy to take you through those detail, but I think probably I will try to cover all the areas of the report and then take any specific questions. I think what is important here is paragraph 15. You will see how the contingency has been applied. So that's where you will see on just below paragraph 15, there's a table about the savings. So if you look at 2019-20, 2021, 21-22, that's where we're saying there's a shortfall in our savings of 8.4 million. And how this is made, you will see 2019-20, 4 million, 2021, we managed to deliver most of the savings, and 21-22, 2.8 million. So you will see on those 3 years, because when we started to track 19-20 savings, that's where we started to have some slippage because this was on 2 years. So when you look over 3 years, the total savings program is in the region of 39 million. And out of 39 million, we've got 8.4, which is in progress. So we are working on, and you will see when we are going to come back with the budget, you will see a RAGI status on delivery of those savings as part of the appendices. There might be one or two which can be a bit harder to deliver, can take a bit longer to deliver. But as officers, we are driving that. If it's a budget, we've got to deliver unless there is a absolutely strong reason that we can't. So, and that shows you how we've used the contingency and what is the impact on Q1. I think paragraph 18 talks about the level of underspend, and the main one is the borrowing cost. That shows the borrowing cost which we've saved because we carried out our policy of borrowing short term, and the interest has been favorable. So you have to say we're expecting interest rate to start to go up when we open up the economy, but right now the interest has been low over the last sort of 6 months. But now we can see signs of the interest start to creep up, because practically every 2 days I look at what the gilt is doing, so how much government is borrowing. So, and in United States as well, they signed that potentially that interest rate will start to creep up. So that's why we started to look long-term borrowing. I think public health, we have to say there is, as it says here, the net underspend of 400, but any underspend in public health is ring-fenced for public health. So we can't transfer any underspend from public health to general fund or to HRA. HRA as well, there is a surplus of 1.6, and any surplus generated in HRA are ring-fenced toward building more properties. Schools budget as well, there's a net underspend of 582, but schools is also an area where you've got the special educational need, the SEN, we can see those pressures there as well. So this is we are going to continue to monitor. Paragraph 23 onwards explain the 6.7, how this is allocated, but as I've mentioned to members, this is a one-off. So we don't expect any more funding from central government. That is what is expected. And it gives you the breakdown of the 6.7 on the paragraph. It talks about vaccination. It talks about all the grant funding which we've received. The capital monitoring, it's there. And the capital monitoring, you will see there is an additional. So this is, some of them are in terms of slippage in the project, but some of them, like airport, we've drawn down in advance. So i.e. the projects are profiled, and we have been drawing down more this year rather than the projects the following year. So that gives you in terms of the capital budget, but the capital budget within the envelope approved by full council, plus the emergency budget, plus what was approved as part of the July report. So that takes you to the next, which is, and the main reason on paragraph 31 gives you the gap, why the forecast. It gives you the debenture loan, which was earlier drawn down, and there's a couple of projects which we have, like Vale Cemetery extension. It will be sort of a reduced cost. Q1, capital and spend, that gives you an indication of where the capital is spent, how much is profiled, how much is the annual forecast. So that gives you, but as I said, is you will see the detailed explanation is paragraph 31, those variances. Capital financing is where our borrowing is, our capital program is financed. So you will see 100 on the table on page 20. It gives 180 from general fund and then 2618 for HRV. So that's a total Q1 207 million of capital funding. And you will see the biggest element of that is a corporate projects, and corporate projects is mainly for our loan to Lal and to Foxhole Home. Then it's worth looking at the risk. As I said, the risk is we have to make sure we have a sort of balanced and sustainable budget. So right now with those one-off, it's a balanced budget. At this stage, we are reviewing Q2. Q2 might throw some upside or downside, but we have to make sure that if there are any costs, any variation funded from one-off, we have to make sure there are mitigation plan in order to have a sustainable budget. There are various appendices, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so it's very detailed, but at this stage, I think I've covered the main element of the report and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Dev. Questions? Alan.
Thank you, David. You talk about the pressures on the budget. What consideration have you given to the end of the furlough scheme, which could create a number of redundancies? It's still being speculated on how many people who are currently furloughed will actually be made redundant when the scheme ends. We've got potential of losing 263 jobs at Vauxhall plant, which is not furlough, but because of the chip shortage. And also, there's an end to the protection from eviction for rent arrears, which is potentially going to have an impact on the housing budget.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, furlough. In terms of the number of staff being furloughed in Luton, we are slightly higher than the national average because, as I said, the reliance and the dependency on the airport and the dependency on the car industry and dependency on the retail sector because you've got the shopping center. So this is something which I'm keeping a close eye on it. There was an article in, I think, was it BBC News, talking about, I think, 6,000 jobs which are currently under furlough. So we are looking at those areas and we're trying to see what is going to happen. Let's hope, because I think, I don't know, sooner or later probably we'll reach that herd immunity. I'm not a scientist, but I'm just thinking if we reach that herd immunity, hopefully UK might start to open up the economic, and I think we are opening up. If we get those arrangements which the central government is trying to get with Europe and with America and open up the aviation industry, we are all hoping for. And that's largely dependent on how the economy will do. So fingers crossed, although with the winter season, we are all hoping that we are going to recover and then there will be jobs available because there's vacant. There's the amount of vacant posts out there is record high. So we're just trying to see what is going to happen, how bad the winter is going to be, whether there will be further lockdown or further measures, we don't know, question mark. But the point you absolutely made is part of Q2, when we are monitoring, we'll try to make an assessment because the impact on furlough and the point you made about eviction, and we haven't been able to do the recovery, so there might be an element with the private sector as well will start to evict. So we'll have to keep a close eye. So far, there is no central government funding because there's just first quarter. I think the plea from the business and from local government is to say to extend that support, to extend that furlough. Whether it's going to happen or not, we don't know. But it's still going to be pressure. So your point is, yeah, and it's going to be significant. How are we going to manage that? It is to give the challenge. Now, what we are doing is, if the economy recovers fast, then you might say it's a short-term pressure. So you might use, and that's why sometimes we have sort of contingency or reserve set aside to say if it's short-term pressure, yes, let's not take long-term measures in order to plug those short-term pressures. But provided that is short-term, is not long-term. If it's becoming long-term, and that's some of the things we are looking at in terms of parking income, will we have the same level of parking income which is pre-pandemic? Question mark. So if that's what happened, what else in the economy which generate more income so that we can rely on those? So it's very much, it's like we are learning as we go along. But going back to your point, yes, those are too big. Eviction and furlough is too big, because one of the things is people they lose their job and they will come back on the benefits, then we recover from DWP. But then if we've got to have homelessness on temporary accommodation, then it's council responsibility, and we won't recover the total amount. So we know that temporary accommodation or homelessness has got the budget pressure, but that's may increase. And that's what local government is trying to get the message to central government, that although we might be coming out of slowly, but the pressure is still here. And the pressure might be a different pressure. High street, there's pressure on high street. So yeah, I fully agree. It's something which we're monitoring.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? No? It won't surprise you to hear that I've got a couple. First of all, Dev, on page 12, paragraph 6, in the middle there you've got children's care placements excluding savings shortfall.
Yeah.
Should we assume that the savings shortfall that you're referring to there is included in the top line?
The 8.4, yeah.
Okay.
So because the 8.4, you've got some include 1920 as well. So we try to do that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of references to the Century Park access road. I'm just wondering, could you tell us how much from the capital or revenue budgets has been spent on Century Park access road in the current financial year, and how much you expect that figure to be by the end of the financial year?
Okay, so the Century Park access road, we've gone through that, and in principle we are not investing right now in Century Park access road, but what we're doing with Century Park access road, we try to split into phases. So the bigger project, which was we're looking at it because of the reasons which we have discussed before, we're trying to phase it in smaller phases. So the first, so the spend to date, I will get a much more detailed information, but I will explain you in the ballpark figures. The spend to get to that planning application, where we had to submit that planning application in order to unlock the potential for the enterprise zone, and at one point we were having discussion for DFT funding and SEMLab funding. So at that point, that was the strategy before pandemic which we were following. So I think ballpark figures, I think I will correct that, maybe it was around 9 million. Yeah, I think it's in the capital program. So I will confirm that, but I think it was around 9 million, that's capital expenditure. And that capital expenditure, as I said, we change our strategy and we're looking at application part of the levelling up fund, because part of levelling up fund infrastructure project, we can apply outside the normal pot of 20 million up to 50 million. So that's what the council is exploring, and that will unlock the potential of certain area within the Century Park access, the enterprise zone, where Century Park access road, part of that Century Park access road can unlock that potential. So that business case we're working on, I can go back and check whether we are spending some money to get that business case or just our in-house officers are spending time on that. But we're not talking about big money. What we're talking about investment, not on Century Park access road, but investment to unlock the potential of getting the levelling up fund. So government has allowed a pot of money for levelling up fund. There is an allocation. Whether we're using that allocation, I'll have to come back on that, Councillor Frank. But what I'm saying here, we're not investing in Century Park access road directly. What we are doing is to get that levelling up fund, which unlock that potential 50 million. You were successful to deliver that phase of Century Park access road, which is unlock that part of the enterprise zone, which can create jobs, create prosperity, create additional GV.
Yeah, I mean, the build-up to the planning application is all history. That's spent. Can't do anything about that. I'm much more interested in what's being spent in the current year.
Yeah.
And you've already spent £3 million buying the lease on Preservation House.
Yeah.
You've made reference to I can't remember the figure now, 1.14 or something million as 1.14 million as continuing revenue spend every year, which I assume includes the £500,000 rent which you've got to pay because you only bought the lease, you didn't buy the freehold of the building.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the 1.14 and the revenue charges on the £3 million purchase are the only sums that you're planning to spend in the current financial year?
Yeah. So the 3.2 million, which is the capital, and that's 3.2 million, the debt servicing and the MRP on that 3.2 million is included in the 1.1. So the capital spend, we are spreading over the life of the property. So that's why. So it's not 3.2 plus 1.1, it's a 3.2 spread plus the interest on. Then in the 1.1 is when we acquired that Preservation House, that was an expectation at that time that will generate a rental income. So there's around $500,000 in that 1.1 million, which is a rental income. So that's the shortfall in that rental income, and that's what we're trying to explore options, how we can rent that property back. But for the current year, due to the timing, we are assuming a bit the worst case and saying if we don't rent the property for the whole year, that is going to be 1.2. So as you quite rightly mentioned, Councillor Frank, is the revenue implication of that capital borrowing is 3.2. So coming back to your question is, so far, how much we spend on the, St. Park Access Road is so far those are the numbers. The bit which I will come back to check and come back, and I know in principle that's I will see what the officers are doing that business case, so we're getting some external support. So what we're spending is not directly linked with the St. Park Access Road, but putting that application in order to unlock that levelling up fund. So the business case will be the business case for St. Park Access Road and the enterprise zone, but what is important is it's the business case for the application. So it's not that we're investing in St. Park Access Road, but we're investing, and that's what I'll have to go back and check. So there's no significant, and you will see there's nothing in the capital program for St. Park Access Road. So we're not spending as part of the capital program, but because of the levelling up fund, we have to spend some money to get that business case ready. So that I will come back and confirm how much you're spending and how much you're planning to spend. But as you quite rightly pointed out, there's nothing in the capital program on St. Park Access Road, so we're not spending on the St. Park Access Road capital.
Okay, thank you for that. Last question from me then is on page 48, which, if you're looking at the circulated paper copy, you can't read it actually. I checked mine on the CMIS system. It hasn't reproduced very well, Matt. It's but this is the budget savings monitoring. It's explaining how you're getting on with the savings that were built into the budget that was approved in February. Yes. And it's quite clear that quite large chunks of areas where you are actually failing to achieve the savings are in things like car parking, where obviously there's been a huge drop in the amount of money the council's been collecting from car parking for very obvious reasons. And that couldn't have been predicted, but so yeah, I understand all that. But there's one item here on page 48 which puzzles me, and that is concessionary fares. It seems to be saying that the council is still paying the bus companies the same amounts of money that it paid before the COVID problems hit us, even though the public's actually use of the bus service and of their bus passes is a tiny fraction of what it was before. So why is the council still paying the same amounts to the bus companies?
Okay. I will try to give you a little bit my understanding, but I remain to be corrected on that. So I know this is an area discussion is taking place, so I'm not privy to those detailed discussion. But what I would make a general comment here, which might not necessarily apply to the bus company here. As part of the government guidance, because of coronavirus, there was a procurement rule. There's a technical term they call that. So there was a procurement rule which government says, that not necessarily apply here, so I will come back on those to exactly what is happening here. But there was a guidance coming from central government. It was a bit like a directive. So what central government is saying, as a council, if you got a contract to, let's say, a cleaning company which do all the cleaning, but because of the pandemic, the office didn't need cleaning, or need cleaning once a week rather than 3 times a week, or whatever. I'm being hypothetical here. The directive says that we have to carry on paying the full amount of the contract value. The reason being, because of local government, we've already raised the council tax, so we've got the money, and at the same time to support those suppliers. So there was that clear guidance that we will have to carry on paying until we start to come back, and that was a time-limited period which we have to carry on. Whether this falls within that procurement directive, I will go back and check. But we carried on paying certain companies. I'll give you a simple example. BTS carries out repairs for HRA. But because of the pandemic, they couldn't go and do a lot of things which they were supposed to do. But still, we had to charge HRA for those. And that was applied not for local government, a bit across. But on this specific note, I'll come back with detailed answer. But it might be that we carried on paying for the bus companies because of this procurement rule. But don't take my word, I will come back. But there might be a reason, but I will come back to that. Yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't a BTS contract. It isn't a cleaning contract. My understanding of the contract with the bus companies is that the payment is related to the number of times the bus pass is used.
Yeah.
And it's not a reflection of the actual journey made, because that all gets too complicated.
Yeah.
The deal, as I understood it, is that every time someone uses their bus pass, the council pays the bus company something like the average fare for the passengers that bus company carries.
Yes.
A much simpler way, and probably in the end you're going to get to pretty much the same answer. But the point is that the number of bus pass uses is a tiny fraction of what it was. So I really don't understand why, if you're paying the average fare every time someone uses their bus pass, and all of a sudden the bus pass use drops by 80 or 90%, which it did, then how come the council's still paying the bus company the same amount of money?
And that's I'll come back to check in this specific, but that's what that procurement directive says. It says even they are not using, if you're contractually already obliged to pay them X amount for this year, then we expect the council to pay those. Even if I don't know the specific on this one, but as I give the example for if somebody is not cleaning the council, but still we had the contract to pay, I don't know, 500,000, under that procurement directive, we still had to carry on paying because of the pandemic. Whether that was a specific of this one, I'll come back and yeah. So although if you've got a contract and due to the pandemic, that service is not being delivered, the guidance, I will forward a copy of that guidance, says as a council will carry on honoring that payment. That was the directive which was. Whether it's a specific on this case, I'm not saying that, but I will come back on that, Councillor Frank. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, if you could
Sure.
drop an email to to Matt, and he'll circulate it. I guess probably the easiest way.
Yes.
But I do think we need to understand a little bit about the nature of the contract.
Yeah.
And if it's not as I've described,
Yeah.
But that's how I understood it, but I'm not a world's leading expert on it.
Yeah.
If it is not a average fare payment every time someone uses their bus pass, if there's a different formula, then I think we need to know what that is.
Sure.
Because there's a tidy amount of money here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get
Any
you
more
full
questions,
answer.
anybody? Steve?
Yeah, going back to the preservation house thing, you talked there about obviously the shortfall and wanting to get some of the shortfall back with a short-term rental of the property.
Yeah.
Given the fact that we don't know how long any company wanting to use that property would have that property for, I'd imagine that would be a rather unattractive proposition for most companies. So what are you doing to try and potentially offset those losses, considering the chances of getting put it this way, the chances of getting someone to come in and enter the property and on a short-term rental is not 100%. So what are you doing to potentially cover that shortfall if no company will rent the building?
So, as I said, that 1.1 million, there's two elements to that. One is the MRP and the interest. So, because we've already spent 3.2 million, as you pointed out, Councillor Frank, that capital has already been incurred. So we can't reduce that MRP interest. The only element which we have control is that rental. And that's the point you exactly made. It's that property, if it was like we had the whole freehold and the whole thing is the pandemic is not with us and recovery is there, airport and everything, it will be much easier to rent. But I think we are all struggling, like other companies are struggling, is there's less demand for properties and retail sector is struggling. So we are looking at options, even as quite right said, even if we can rent it in the short term, that's why I try to explore that. But renting it will require some investment. So before we incur additional investment to put in a situation, we have to just test the market, because we might end up investing more, but if the market, the demand is not there, then we might be incurring more than 3.2 million. So that's why you will see in the capital program, there was a budget line to do some refurbishment, to put it in a position where we can rent it, but we are evaluating that. If we invest, but still if we can't rent it, then we'll be putting more money. So that's why I said options is being explored. As part of Q2, I will try to see where we are. But the renting market is proving too difficult because, like office, retail, there's a lot of surplus property because people working from home or residential. But that property is more for industrial, so hopefully that's what I'm thinking is for we might rent it for like warehouse because there's a demand for like Amazon or whatever. So we're trying to explore those options. But it is a challenge. You're right. I agree with you.
As my point is, if you're a business wanting to use that as a warehouse, you're only going to have that rent prospectively for a certain amount of time. You don't control the end of that if you're the business coming in. So it's less attractive to say a warehouse where you'd get the leasehold for a longer amount of time, and you're not beholden to, this case, obviously our council. So for a potential end kick-out date, so to speak. The other question I have is just above that, ironically, on page 14, with the green waste collection. It says it's been successful and the income target has been overachieved by 4.25 million. You've then got the two sums for the extra staff and for covering the demand, and the one to respond to the fly tipping, which are 320,000 and 80,000 to respond to that. Is that included in that 4.2, that 425,000 figure that is the overachievement? Because if it isn't, and anyone would say that those two perspectives are purely related to the change in that, because obviously the fly tipping wouldn't have happened if we hadn't changed that system, and we wouldn't have needed the extra crews for that system. It wouldn't be an overachievement of 425,000. It'd be an overachievement of 50,000, I think, if my maths is correct. Yeah, because those two sums come to 400,000. So yeah, rather than overachieving by 425,000, it suggests if those two sums aren't included, the overachievement is only 50,000.
I think my understanding here is the scheme, there was, I haven't gone through the detail here, but it was quite well received. So the total which you're referring to, that includes that overachievement. But because the Green Waste is a new initiative and the council was charging for that, we can't use the overachievement for any other purposes other than reinvesting back in the green waste. So that's why we are reinvesting back into the service. But the point you're making, yeah, absolutely, it's that 400 is included in the 4.2, which is that additional income which was generated. And it won't be wise to cross-subsidize from green waste to other areas. So that's why we put those. And the other thing, at that time when the business case was put together, there was a number of bin which they said they will collect. But now since they're collecting more, the income is more, they need more resources to collect those additional bins. So that's why we are plowing back that additional cost towards the pressure which this has been created.
I'm not entirely sure you got, because my point is purely, are those two figures on page 14 that are in the brackets, are they negatives that are accounted for in that figure? As in,
Yeah.
you've got the overachievement 0.425, that's
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
it's money we can use, but is those two other figures underneath it included? Because otherwise we've basically spent that on that.
Sure. So that's 425. Absolutely, I get your point now. So
Yeah.
that 425, those 320,
And the 80,
was not included in the budget because our income, we've generated more than what we expected.
yeah.
Then we're saying we are going to use that 425 because there's additional pressure which we have to start 2 crews and additional support in order to deliver that 425. So the projected say we will overachieve based on what people are subscribing to, but because of the level of income and activity is higher, these are the additional resources which we need. So the point you're making is absolutely, I get that, is the 425 will be used to 320 and the 80 to deliver that additional cost pressure.
Oh yeah, so the 320, 80, that was always going to be spent and
Yes.
in underneath the original targets.
Those two
I
items,
understand that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why we are bringing that, because any allocation of additional income, if it's not approved by the budget, then we'll have to bring it to executive for approval, although it won't have an overall impact on the budget. But your point you're making, yeah, it's there. Is that how the 425
Yeah, I
creates
understand
the
that
80?
now.
Yeah. No.
Thank you.
Sorry, it took a little bit time for me to
No,
understand.
that's fine. Yep.
Anybody else want to get involved in this? Comments or questions before we... No? Okay, well, we don't have a recommendation as such, but I'm... Yeah, let's just save that just for a minute, because I think we have to consider where we are actually with Century Park Access Road. The history is not a happy one. An outline business case was prepared and was considered by this group, Overview and Scrutiny, the Scrutiny Finance Review Group, back in 2019, in fact, August 2019, and they spent 3 meetings going over it because it's a very complicated process. And because it was all done in private, I'm not allowed to, in a public meeting, explain to you exactly what their findings were, but they came up with 2 pages full of reasons why the outline business case didn't work. It didn't stack up financially and for other reasons as well. That conclusion was supported by all three groups, political groups, on the Finance Review Group at the time. It was reported back to executive later in, I think that was in September 2019, and the executive agreed with it. Agreed that the outline business case simply didn't work. So where the council is at the moment is it is still spending money on a project which isn't supported by an outline business case that is actually robust. Personally, I can't see that I can say that that is a satisfactory state of affairs. So what I would like to propose to you is a two-pronged resolution from this meeting. One, that we note the position on the budget monitoring, and thank Dev for a very informative presentation of it, so we all understand where we are. And further, that executive be advised that it is the view of FRG that the council should cease all spending which is not already legally committed by contract on Century Park Access Road until a financially sound outline business case has been approved and accepted.
Okay, Chair, just say, I think that recommendation is fine, that's FRG. Yeah, I'll just try to make a little bit of my observation. It's absolutely right that outline business case, when it was done, the circumstances have changed. The reason why, I will explain. At that point, as you say, the outline business case, we look at it and we say, okay, for the time being, we just have to reconsider at appropriate time. And that appropriate time, the opportunities has opened up because of levelling up fund. So what this opportunity is giving us is, let's say at that outline business case, let's say if you're talking about 50 million. When the outline business case was discussed for CPAR at that point, you're absolutely right, everything was supposed to be funded by the council. But right now, if we open up that part of that enterprise zone where we create the jobs and everything which we require, and if we're successful, and that's what officers are working on, if we're successful to unlock that 50 million of levelling up fund, so it's free money, it's a grant. So it's like, I would say, quite big significant difference using the council 50 million of borrowing or using a government grant of levelling up fund 50 million. And that might change the business case because circumstances have changed. Government is encouraging opened up infrastructure project. If you're successful, that business case will be slightly different because you will have a funding without any MRP or debt servicing. So your point, absolutely right. We have to look at the business case, whether it stacks up to proceed with that first phase of Century Park Access Road. And that's what exactly officers are doing, is to revising that outline business case to say, if we submit an outline business case to central government and we are successful in that business case, then that's opened up 50 million of free grant. And to do that, we have to spend some money. So the point which I would make here, Councillor Frank, is we're not spending money on Century Park Access Road per se, but what we're spending in the business case to secure that 50 million, which will enable us to develop that Century Park Access Road. If we prepare that business case and business case still says, no, it doesn't stack up or we can't apply, then we won't. So and that's the slight difference is of that outline business case, the levelling up fund money has been announced by the current government recently, and we think there's opportunity here. So we won't have that opportunity maybe in 2-3 years' time because that won't be available. Then it will be back to the drawing board is how we are going to proceed. But it was pointing out that Century Park Access Road will unlock a big enterprise, and then that's only area it's landlocked. So that's I would say, just my observation is the circumstances when we discussed outline business case and now is that big 50 million which is there. So if government can say that's a good infrastructure project, which unlock the enterprise zone, will create jobs, will create everything, and that's what officers. So I will come back is whether we're spending money or not. That's 3.2 million resource prevention. That was part of that first thing, so there was an option. But now, towards that, I will get back to you to say. My understanding is if we are, so I'm not saying we're spending, maybe officers are putting that business case, so I'm still waiting for that business case as well. But if they are, we have consultant, external consultant helping us to put that business case, then that I will let you know how much and how much the project. But we're not going and acquiring properties or doing other things, but there might be an element which is very much not linked with the Central Park access directly, but to unlock that 50 million of levelling up fund. But I said the point you made is yeah, we take on board, so executive will discuss that. But just to let you know why I'm sitting as a section 1 sir, what are the things which have changed is we're not investing in Central Park access, but we're investing to unlock that 50 million, which will help to unlock CPAR, subject to, as you quite right state, the 50 million should have a business case in itself.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, we all understand no one's suggesting that the council shouldn't be taking advantage of any money coming from the government on levelling up fund, or for that matter on anything else. But, any money coming from the government is generally to be welcomed, because it's scarce enough, isn't it? The other point in response I would have to say is that executive has the authority under the council's constitution to change its spending plans at any time it chooses to do so, and if circumstances significantly change, then yes, you would expect executive to alter their plans. That's part of the job that they have to do in looking after the council's finances. So even if we do recommend that they stop spending on the access road now, and if they agree to that, they can change their mind when the circumstances change. That's precisely the reason for the flexibility in the Constitution. It is as it should be. I'm not complaining about that. But it's interesting that you mentioned the enterprise zone, because the enterprise zone money and the business rates benefit that the council was due to receive was all dependent on the first part of the enterprise zone actually being occupied by a date in March, 6 months ago. Now, that clearly didn't happen. So, I mean, what's the status of the enterprise zone now? Is the offer still there, or is it gone away? So we have to start again and hope to get another go at applying.
Yeah. I think absolutely right. And that's exactly the point I'm making. There's no money in the capitalist program to spend on Central Park Access Road. So you're right. If we are to spend big capital money on somewhere, it will have to go back to the Executive and Full Council. The enterprise zone, yes, those are the business case when we set up the CPAR. What we are looking at, the levelling up fund will have its own conditions on the basis on which we can secure that 50 million. And that levelling up fund, based on that business case, will have to, yeah. So I have to go back and look at, because as I said, they're working on that proposal, the application, and I will come back to say what are the criteria for us to secure that levelling up fund. You're absolutely right. If it's a DFT project, then they will look at all the environmental benefits, all the transport benefits, and it's based on the WebTAC principle. If it's an MHLG, they will look at the housing, number of houses you're building, uplift in land value. So I'll come back to say what are the criteria for that levelling up fund, and then you're absolutely right. That business case will take into account. If business rates is an element of that, then I will look at what happened with that business rate, which is linked with enterprise zone, and what the business rate will generate, whether it will be a factor of that levelling up fund. So if you bear with me, I'll come back on that. Yeah? But that's a very valid point.
Okay, thanks very much. In that case, anybody else want to come in? No? Okay, so we'll move to a vote on
So, yeah.
what I proposed, which is that we... I was just going to go through it again, make sure everybody understands what I'm proposing. Okay. That we note the forecast position as spelled out in the report, thank the Section 151 officer for a very helpful report and presentation, and that we recommend to executive that the council should cease all spending which is not already legally committed by contract on the Century Park access road until a financially sound outline business case has been approved and adopted, accepted. Accepted? You know, I guess that's the word, that'll do. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. So, those in favour?
Have those against, please. 4 in favour and 4 against, Chair.
I'm sorry?
That's sorry, 3 in favour and 4 against.
Yeah, if we could have the votes of the 3 Liberal Democrat members, please, recorded in the minutes.
That'll be fine, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I will move the first bit, which is that we note the forecast position as explained in the report and thank Section 151 officer. All those in favour of that? Have we got a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, everybody in favour of that? Unanimous.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. I think we've only got one other item of business, haven't we?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. We seem to have missed out agenda item 9, which was statement of accounts. It was a verbal update.
Well, I had assumed that that was included in the presentation of the forecast position. But, Deb, if you have anything additional to say, now's your opportunity.
Yeah, so slightly different. This is to do with the statement of accounts. So it goes to the committee, but FRG needs to be aware where we are, because one of the things is, you mentioned a couple of occasions, you would like to know what the auditors view, because the auditors will look at our accounts, which is 2018, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. And if there's any adjustments, then we'll have to bring it to FRG to say, look, here's the outturn, but the audit is saying X, Y, and Z, and how will have an impact on what you have been scrutinizing. So where we are on 18, 19, and there was, you will see the audit committee is webcast live as well. So there has been minutes and everything, so auditors just discuss where we are. So just quickly, 18, 19, and the chair was the audit committee has been brief. So 18, 19 was practically done. The only thing, the reason why there was a delay on 18, 19, because as a lot of audit firms, they're struggling to sign accounts. Even 2021 accounts, audit firm are saying because of capacity, because of the pressure, half of accounts won't be signed by the deadline. So it's not something which is just for Luton. But in our case, because there was capacity issue at our auditors, and then in our case, because our account is quite complex because of the airport and our exposure to other subsidiary companies, it took some time. So when it came to back in January, February, when we were just about to say, okay, fine, 18, 19 is more or less practically done, then we hit the pandemic. With the pandemic, then everything becomes what you call a post-balance sheet even. So when we're signing 18, 19 accounts, and members have asked me, but Dave, 18, 19 accounts, how come 19, 20 we are still? But what happens is, when the auditor signs the accounts, that's important, they look at the council position, not the history, but what the council position is going to look like next 18 months or 24 months. And that's what they call going concern. So because of the pandemic, because of our exposure to the airport, because a lot of councils, the exposure to some with like Manchester, then the financial regulators issued statement to all auditors, not just Ernst & Young, to say now the pandemic has opened up significant uncertainty, and auditors, you have to look at what the entities, not the council, it's private sector, everything, Heathrow, all the companies, but that's still going to be a going concern in the next 12, 18 to 24 months. So that's why auditors says now, although they've got, and you will see in the audit committee, everything is okay with 1819, but we won't be able to sign it. So then we, the last 16 months, we have gone through really the perfect storm and putting emergency budget, bringing the stabilization plan, recovery plan for LAL, driving down a savings program, just to demonstrate that the council is a going concern. The council is still financially sustainable. And that has been demonstrated in the 21-22 budget, because we've got a balanced budget and we're driving that savings program. Yeah, it's harder, it's difficult, but when you're driving a 22-25 million program just within an emergency budget, it is difficult. So 1920, the audit has been completed. Not completed, sorry. The field work has been done, and we're meeting with Ernst & Young because they are going to go through all the aspects, the financial resilience, the recovery, what impact will have on the council, what impact on the airport, what is happening with coronavirus. So looking at everything, because the group account, it includes LAL and Vauxhall Home. So 1920, the fieldwork practically has been done. So far, the auditors in their last audit haven't highlighted any significant issues with the 1920 itself, but they're looking at a couple of areas. One of the areas in terms of procurement, and one of the areas are looking at in terms of the way some of the costs is treated in LAL accounts. So that's it. As for the council account is concerned, the figures, they haven't raised any major concerns. Our aim, and we've made it clear in the audit committee, and the partner, Neil, was in accordance with our understanding. We are aiming that they will complete all the work by end of September. So Robin has arranged another meetings. We are having regular meeting with the auditors and regular meeting with MHCLG as well. As you know, we had this capitalization directive, and we have CIFA carried out a detailed review of the council and the airport and everybody. So waiting for all these reports to be finalized, and our aim is for NSM to complete their field work and everything by end of September and get everything finalized by end of October. So 1819, 1920, our aim is we're pushing auditors and working with them to get it done by end of October. And for 2021, which is we've just completed, that's most of the council accounts throughout UK won't be signed by the deadline date. So our aim is then, once we've done that, then we'll ask our auditors to start, hopefully in November, December, get the 21-21 accounts done. But what is important here is, one, they are looking at 2019, they're also looking at 2021. So when they're looking at the financial resilience of the council, the impact on the COVID, they're looking at 18 months from the date. If they sign tomorrow, it's 18 months down the line. So they're already looking at the areas which is 2021. So I have to say all this is so far progressing well. We made a lot of progress with practically having the emergency budget and trying to stabilize LAL so that LAL is stable, and the council is stable because council depends largely on LAL as well, and LAL depends on the council. So that's hopefully we've done the significant piece of work, and it has been a challenge, and members have been with us. I've been sitting in the FRG audit committee and executive, and it has been a challenge. It has been a tough year, yeah. But I think we are making progress, and hopefully we can this is the light out of the tunnel. That's my hope, yeah. So just to brief you, yes. So we will be setting an exceptional audit committee just to approve the account. It's very much timing of the audit. So the next audit committee is in November. So if the auditors are ready, it's signed, we'll bring an audit committee. And that presentation, then I will cascade those to FRG as well. Then you know what are the position, because scrutinizing the council finances is important to know what the auditors view on where we are. So that's just to brief FRG in the statement of accounts. Thanks, Chair.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave, for your explanation. You really explained it eloquently. I was approached by a Central Beds councillor, and he mentioned, oh, you know, your council is going to be bust, and, you know, this is happening there. And I did explain to him, you know, as much as I possibly can, you know, it's a different story with Luton because of the airport. But you explained it really well, and please, if you can email this, and I was going to approach you anyway to explain to you the situation, that'd be brilliant. I'll just forward the email. Thank you.
So, there are official documents already.
The microphone there, please.
Official document already. So, and that goes to the audit committee. So if you see the auditor's position statement, clearly they are not saying the council is bust. Yeah? If the council was going bankrupt, then as a Section 1.5 officer, it's my responsibility to issue what we call a Section 114. So if I have not issued a Section 114, and even if I was of the view that, no, I don't have to issue a Section 114, auditors have got the right responsibility and authority under the Local Government Act for them to intervene and issue what they think is the right thing to do. Auditors haven't done it so far. In the position statement, clearly they made it clear the areas which they are looking at, and those areas we have been addressing over the 15 months is how we stabilize the whole system. So it's a system we're stabilizing here. So I will give you a link to those documents, and those documents clearly laid out that the council has taken those measures in place as part of the emergency budget. We were the first council to put an emergency budget because we realized aviation industry was completely shut, and we couldn't have a budget with a 19 million deficit because of the dividend. So, touch wood, we are coming out of the tunnel, so hopefully the recovery, as I said, hopefully we'll come out of the pandemic and the economy start, but no. And the other thing is council has been prudent. Over the years, we have made 10, 12 million of savings, faced with a challenge from significant reduction in our funding from central government and increase in cost of services. The council has been driving with officers, members, working together with residents, because it's always good because the council is here to provide services to residents. I've been driving a savings program of 12, and we have saved 160 million since 2010. So, but the things which is the financial management of the council, we have achieved those balanced budget until we hit the pandemic we have increased our reserves. So whenever there was one-off gain in terms of some of the PFI contract refinancing, some of the collection fund, we have been using this one-off to put it in the reserves. So we have achieved a balanced budget without drawing down from reserves. If before the pandemic, if we have been drawing down heavily from the reserves, then we would have been in a much, not a strong position. So we've got compared to, I have to say, we've got our reserves are slightly below average, but faced with what we have faced, our reserves are there. So we do use reserves, as I've pointed out in this Q1, to not to fund ongoing expenditure. Because once you spend your reserves, it's gone. You can't spend it twice. So, but if we have to spend some reserves in order to get us to a position which is more sustainable, that's what we do. So that's with the help of all members, scrutiny and everything, we scrutinize the budget, and we have been able to sustain this pandemic and this big hit. The total dividend we have lost is 19 million, 16 million, plus 14 million, just 50 million in 3 years. So, but we drove an emergency budget, and that is delivering, and once we deliver, that's the gap. So, I wouldn't use the term what Luton is burst. No, I don't think. I'm sure Councillor Frank as well will he's very experienced. I think he will share my view here that no, we are not burst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dave, just straight and simple question. What is your idea roughly like till pandemic start? and we serve the emergency budget and budget. How much money or dividend or reserve we save in this whole time? Straight like, if I ask you this question.
So,
And how much we lost as a normal, like before that, what we was earning, and how much we saved?
yeah. So
COVID
just to give you an indication. So when the pandemic hit in 1920, we already had in LAL accounts that we will get 19 million of dividend. 19. And then the year of the pandemic, which is 2021, we had 16 million of dividend, which we are supposed to receive from LAL. And 21-22, which is the current year, we had 14 million of dividend. So over the last 3 years, we had 49 million of dividend built in the 3 years accounts. Once LAL got into this, the aviation industry practically, and it's not just a council. Manchester Council with the 10 Manchester Group, they've invested in the Manchester Group of airports. So it's not only the council, the government is investing significant amount and giving significant loan and grant in order to keep the economy going. I think the trick here is, if you got a viable business, then you have to keep going until you come out of the pandemic. If you don't have a viable business, then you will be throwing good money off the bat. But if it's viable, and we all know the airport is viable, so that 49 million, that's why we made an application for the capitalized loan from MHCLG. But because we put an emergency budget straight away when it started to deliver, we managed to stop that. If, let's say, we waited for 2 years to put an emergency budget, then that gap in the budget would have been funded from reserves. Half our reserves would have been gone, half. And that wouldn't be something. You can't just wipe out. You build reserves, you can't. Our reserves we have in the region of around 80 million, 80. Some of them are general fund reserve, which I haven't touched so far. And some of them are ring fence, but they are ring fence for a certain purpose. But if you really hit an emergency, then we might make use of those reserves, some of them for capital projects as well. So at this stage, we haven't touched those reserves. Our reserves are still around the region of 80 million. But by delivering that emergency budget early, we stopped that slippage. So we've lost the dividend. The emergency budget replenished those dividends. So we start covering those loss of dividend straight from the first two couple of months. If we left it to go, then 19 million was not going to be paid. Then you have 16 million, then you have 14 million. So that's why we as a council, with the help of officers, members, and the residents, we move quite fast. Pandemic hit, within 3 months, July emergency budget. If we wait, that every month we wait is 2 to 3 million every year. So I think our reserves level are okay. But if you ask me if I would like that level of reserves to be a bit higher, I would say yes, because as a council, we are one of the council in terms of generating commercial income. We are top just off the Westminster, but we are not generating so much income in order to carry on protecting your vital services. But there's a risk because you're getting into a commercial activity. So because of the risk, but we invest very, very wisely. Because of the risk, then I would slightly have. So if you have a bit more money, then I'll put. But right now, when you're balancing a budget and you're driving down costs, you can't make savings and put in reserves because the budget in itself is under pressure. And another example, in our commercial property, we've got around 110 million of commercial property. But as a council, we wouldn't invest in commercial property unless there is a return of 6.5%. So even if the yield, some private sector, they will use a yield of 4.5 or 1.5, but we've got that margin. Even if the yield goes down, we've got a 2%, which at least give us that buffer. So we have been very cautious and prudent, but we have been investing wisely. And as Councillor Frank mentioned, there are some projects, when you look at the business case, if we say no, we have to work further, we do that. So the investment. And that's a challenge for everybody, challenge for merchants, challenge for officers, and challenge for me as a Section 151, because we are talking. Yeah. Yeah. See, hopefully we've done the heavy lifting, because I won't be able to survive another 12 months if that pressure goes on.
Yeah. Dave, did we borrow any money from central government in this pandemic?
That's a very good point. So that's another good things when we put that emergency budget. So and the point, just picking up from Councillor Hambert's point. So let's say if we didn't take any action in terms of emergency budget, then 19 million would have been lost, 16 million lost, straight away you are talking about 35 million. So when we put a report to central government in order to ask for that capitalization directive, our assumption is we don't know we'll be coming out of the pandemic. We don't know when. Virus was still there. No sign of any vaccine. So it was really, yeah. So we went for a 49 million. But I have to say, if you look at the report on this one, or the outturn report, at this stage, for the outturn, we are going to draw on just 14 million, 1-4. So we asked for a 49 million because at that time, that was the expectation, because driving a savings program, emergency program, not having a vaccine, we say, yeah, because we can't go with central government. So, but out of 49 million, so far, just 14 million we need. So we borrowed about capitalization directives. Now, negotiations are still going on and discussion with for the airport and the airport operator. We don't know the passenger numbers now. I think last month up to 49%, and the airport is one of the airports which recovered quite fast when it came out of the last lockdown. So because it's point to point, it's not long haul flight with America or whatever. So that hopefully. So another thing is due to the swift action and the pace and scale which we move in terms of emergency budget, we don't need 49 million to borrow. We need just 14 million, 1-4. And that's borrowing will be funded from what we are going to generate by lending LAL, and that has been factored the 2 million in the budget. So it's not costing the residents of Luton in terms of increasing cost of council tax. So because you're borrowing to stabilize LAL will pay that additional interest on the, so we ring fence that 2 million. Yeah. So that's why I said it has been a perfect storm, but hopefully we are coming out of that perfect storm.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, one short question again. This loan is for 10 years, isn't it? And it's 2.5% interest. And Dave, other thing, the LAL or airport, we as a council have 51% share, isn't it? And 49% that French company or the loan?
Okay. So first question, the 14 million loan will be for 20 years. So the repayment, we are saying 20 years. Okay. And the rate of interest, I think at that time it was around 2.5. Yeah. Having said that, it was 100 basis point above, because one of the conditions of the loan from central government is, because we are giving an emergency loan, those council who have applied for that emergency loan, it was 100 basis point above. 100 basis point is, we talk a bit technical, it's 1%. 1% is 100 basis point. So I think it was around 3%. So the normal lending is 2%. We had to pay this additional 100%. But it was the right thing to do, otherwise you won't be stabilizing. It is too much to take out of the system straight away. Yeah, so that's why we did that. Otherwise you have to take 35 million in terms of an emergency budget, which was around 22 million. So we had to get that additional funding, but it's paid by LAL. In terms of the airport, it's 100%. We own the airport 100%. I think the 50 and the 49% which you're referring to is who owned the LAL, the airport operator. So we own LAL. LAL is a freeholder of the airport, but the concessionaire who run the airport is London Luton Airport Operations Limited. And they are owned by AINA and AMP Capital. So those are, I think, 51 and 49%. Yeah. So those are one is Spanish fund, one is I think is a pension fund. Yeah. But the airport, we own 100%. it's owned by the council.
Dave, thank you for your proactive, yours and your office's finance. Oh, goodness me. Is that on? Sorry. It's comfortable sitting that way. Right, thank you for your proactive work, yours and your finance officers, and that's where the position where we are at the moment, and hoping for a light at the end of the tunnel. My question was, is there anybody, can you tell us anybody else in the country that, or surrounding, same position as us with the airport? Council and airport, same situation. Are they going through what we are going through?
I think the Labour group has resolved all the questions for the last minute. So, but it's very interesting. I'm sure I'm enjoying it because you are showing a very good interest. So hopefully, I'm doing my explanation is helpful. There are other airport, Manchester. So the Manchester group, there is a significant investment from the Manchester Council, I think the 9 or 10 districts. So they've helped the Manchester Airport Group. There are other councils, there's a few other airports where council have exposure. So Manchester Group, I think Manchester, they've loaned around, I think, 200 million. So yeah, other council or have got similar exposure. In our case, because we own the airport 100%, then our that's why we have to invest these, because we are the only shareholder. Now, but the Lal can go and borrow. It might be questions, but I think if Lal borrows, their cost of borrowing might be slightly higher than what the council borrows. So it's good for the council, and that's what, when you operate a group structure, is always the holding company who is on top, do all the treasury management and borrowing, and then lend or invest within the subsidiaries. So that's another things of treasury management. So I think I've answered both questions here. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
We wandered quite a long way from where we started with Dev's update on where the council is, and I have been, I think, quite fair in allowing questions that weren't really pertinent to the presentation. So, last opportunity. Anybody got anything to say? No. Okay. Well, I would just thank Dev for the update and say that it's reassuring in a way, or pleasing anyway, to note that progress is being made. But as we sit here this evening, the council's accounts for the year ended March 2019, the year ended March 2020, and the year ended March 2021 all have not yet been signed off by the auditors.
So just coming back is...
just yes or no, Deb.
But 2021, no, because 2021, they have to start the audit. So what they are already lagging behind is 2018. I wouldn't say is we including external auditors, 18, 19, and 19, 20. Yeah. The due date for 2021, if you want to use 2021, is for accounts to be audited by September, which auditors said they won't, and as you will see is across the whole UK, there is 50% of council accounts won't be signed. But the point you made absolutely is factual. 18, 19, 19, 20 has not been signed, and that's what we're aiming to get it signed. So factually is correct. But just 2021, I think the auditors already said we won't be able to do that. And it's because you will see there is another report will be coming to audit committee, which is Redmond Review. And that Redmond Review will highlight all the challenges faced by auditors in terms of delivering. But
yeah, I understand the explanation, but the fact remains that 3 years of accounts have not been signed off by the council's auditors. Right. Next and final business is the work programme. Has anybody got anything they want to add to the work programme, take off the work programme, suggest about the programme?
Sorry,
Matt?
Chair, can I just interject there? My apologies, the next meeting is not the 28th of October, it's actually the 2nd of November, so that's a mistake on the work programme. So it's not the 28th.
No, thank you for that. Dev?
So as mentioned earlier, Chair, there's two pieces of work which we are doing. One is, as mentioned, Redmond review, but that's something will follow its course and go to audit committee. But it's another piece of work we are doing which we have to, we are supposed to do it last year because of the pandemic, it has been the push forward, is what we call SIPFA FM code. SIPFA FM code means Financial Management Code. And that's how we've done that. We are going to take a report to CLMT, we are going to take a report to executive, but I would like to bring this report to FRG as well. Because in your capacity as a scrutiny of the finance, having a proper management which is CIFA guidance, and we have to as a council to implement those by end of this year. So I would suggest if you can accommodate within your plan, we would like to bring this sort of around November time for you to scrutinize that before it goes to executive.
Yeah, I'm sure the democracy team will find a way to slot that into the programme for us.
Yeah, if I can suggest, the next meeting on 2nd is quite a busy meeting, so if we could have that on the work programme for 25th of November.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, the only other thing about the work programme is we've twice asked for an update on the missing £1.2 million of SEMLEP money, and it has yet to appear anywhere formally in the work programme. Could I ask that that is rectified and that it is slotted into the work programme somewhere?
Yes, Chair.
Anything else?
Sorry.
Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.
Sorry, Matt, 28th of October meeting is not there, yeah?
The 28th of October, that should read the 2nd of November, and then you've got another meeting on the 25th of November.
So 28th
28th of October should be the 2nd of November.
should be on 2nd of November.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you.